Okay, let me tell you a story. It's about a submarine, a state-of-the-art war machine, sent on a do-or-die mission right in the middle of a war. But then, it just vanished. Poof. Gone. Sunk to the bottom of the sea, taking 93 souls with it. And what happened next? Well, its fate became one of the biggest naval mysteries ever. A story buried deep underwater, with two different countries telling two completely different stories about what went down. We're talking about the PNS Ghazi.
So, that's the big question we're going to dive into. What really happened to the PNS Ghazi? Was it taken out in a brilliant act of war by its enemy? Or was it just some kind of tragic fatal accident in the pitch-black darkness of the ocean? We're going to break it all down for you. The mission, the clever counterplan, and of course, those two competing claims.
All right, so let's set the scene. We're going back to 1971. The Indo-Pakistani War is raging. And you know, this story, it's not just about one submarine. It's about a mission that turned into a legend, a secret that people have been arguing about for more than 50 years now.
So, to really get to the bottom of this mystery, you have to meet the main character of our story, and that is the Pakistani naval submarine, the Ghazi. Now, back in 1971, this thing wasn't just any old sub. Oh no, it was, without a doubt, Pakistan's most powerful, most feared weapon on the high seas.
They even had a nickname for it, the Black Hunter. I mean, that tells you something, right? The Ghazi was the absolute pride of the Pakistani fleet. It was a modern, long-range attack sub they'd leased from the US, and get this, it was the only one they had like it. That made it an incredibly powerful and very, very feared asset out there in the Indian Ocean.
So what was its big, dangerous mission? Honestly, it was pretty much a suicide mission. The stakes could not have been higher. Job number 1, find and destroy India's most prized warship, the aircraft carrier INS Vikrant. If they couldn't do that, the backup plan was to lay a bunch of mines and seal off the entrance to Visakhapatnam's harbor, a really key naval port. The endgame? To completely cripple the Indian Navy's entire fleet in the Bay of Bengal.
And just to give you a sense of how insane this mission was, you got to look at the distance. The Ghazi had to travel 4,800 kilometers. That's from its home port in Karachi all the way around India, deep into enemy waters on the other side. A truly perilous journey, and one, as it turns out, from which it would never come back.
But here's the twist. The Indian Navy wasn't just sitting around waiting to get hit. They knew the Ghazi was coming for their prized aircraft carrier. And instead of gearing up for a head-on fight, they decided to play a brilliant game of chess. They were about to set a trap for the hunter.
The plan was called Operation Fakir, and it was an absolute masterclass in deception. Talk about turning the tables, the hunter was about to become the hunted. Here's what they did. First, they took the real prize, the INS Vikrant, and secretly moved it to a hidden spot way out near the Andaman Islands, far from any danger. Then they set the bait. They took an old, aging destroyer, the INS Rajput, sent it to Visakhapatnam, and had it blast out tons of radio signals, basically pretending to be the huge aircraft carrier. The Ghazi? It was now chasing a ghost.
And this all brings us to the climax, the heart of the story. We're on the fateful night of December 3rd, bleeding into the early hours of December 4th, 1971. The Ghazi, totally convinced it's closing in on its target, arrives right off the coast of Visakhapatnam.
From here, things happened fast, incredibly fast. The Ghazi is there, right off the coast. Maybe it's still looking for the Vikrant. Maybe it's starting to lay those mines. Suddenly, the decoy ship, the INS Rajput, detects something underwater, a disturbance. The commander has to make a split-second call. He gives the order, fire depth charges. They drop into the black water, and then, moments later, a massive, violent explosion rips through the sea from below.
By the time the sun came up the next morning, the sea was telling the tale. Local fishermen started reporting huge oil slicks and bits of wreckage floating on the surface. And then it was confirmed. The Black Hunter, the PNS Ghazi, was gone, destroyed. Its entire crew, all 93 sailors, had gone down with their ship.
But this is where the story gets really complicated. Because right here, the single story splits into two. While India was celebrating this massive naval victory, a completely different version of events started to surface. And it kicked off a controversy that, believe it or not, is still debated today. So what really caused that fatal explosion?
Okay, so let's lay out the two competing theories. On one side, you have the official Indian Navy claim. It's pretty straightforward. Our ship, the INS Rajput, sank the Ghazi with depth charges. End of story. But then you have the Pakistani version, which is also backed up by some neutral experts. They say it was an internal accident. Their theory is that either one of the mines the Ghazi was carrying blew up by mistake, or a buildup of explosive hydrogen gas inside the sub itself is what caused the explosion. And the key piece of evidence they point to, the wreckage itself, which they say shows damage from a blast that came from the inside out.
But here's the thing. Regardless of how it sank, attack or accident, the simple fact that it was gone had huge, immediate, and irreversible consequences. The loss of the PNS Ghazi was an absolutely devastating blow to Pakistan, and it became a major turning point in the 1971 war.
The strategic fallout was, well, it was massive. And it was instant. With the Ghazi out of the picture, the Indian Navy suddenly had complete control over the Bay of Bengal. This meant Pakistan had no way to send more troops or supplies to its army in East Pakistan by sea. They were cut off. Meanwhile, the INS Vikrant, now totally safe, was free to launch wave after wave of airstrikes. It was a total naval blockade. And this dominance at sea was a direct reason why the Pakistani army in the east eventually surrendered, leading to the creation of Bangladesh.
And that's where it is to this day. The wreckage of the PNS Ghazi still rests on the seabed, about 100 meters deep, just off the coast of India. It's now officially a war grave, a final, silent monument to the 93 men who were lost with their ship on that dark night.
Which brings us back to that one final haunting question. Attack or accident? Was it a brilliant kill by a cunning enemy, or just a tragic, fatal mistake in the depths of the ocean? The real truth, much like the submarine itself, might just be buried forever in that watery grave.